Hello everyone. Today I'll be speaking about the Medellin Cartel, one of the most ruthless, richest, powerful, and feared criminal organizations to have existed. In this presentation, we will look at what the Medellin Cartel was, how the Medellin Cartel became the preeminent cocaine trafficking organization in the world, why the cartel was considered an organized crime group, their societal impact, and their legacy. So what was the Medellin Cartel? The Medellin Cartel was a group of cocaine producers, transporters, and distributors based in Medellin, Colombia, who amalgamated forces to control most of the worldwide production and distribution of cocaine. This group started in the late 1970s and was prominent until the mid-1990s. At the peak of their operations, it was estimated that the Medellin Cartel generated the astronomical sum of $60 million US a day, far exceeding the income of many large multinational corporations. The Medellin Cartel is a prime example of an elaborate international organized crime group that has had a significant influence on Colombia's economy, politics, and society. So how did the Medellin Cartel get started? Well, in the late 1970s, several less coordinated cocaine producers, transporters, and distributors were discovering the ability to generate massive profits from the growing demand for cocaine in the United States. As the cocaine demand increased, the traffickers became more sophisticated in their operations, and efforts were made to increase the production of cocaine and find creative ways of transporting large quantities in single shipments, including through the use of small private aircraft. With these developments in the cocaine industry, greater profits were generated. However, due to political instability in Colombia and the prominence of armed rebellion groups, these drug traffickers became a source of income for these rebellion groups through extortion. To protect themselves and their industry, several participants collaborated to develop their own armed militia to protect their interests. This collaboration led to the establishment of the Medellin Cartel, whose operations were led by Pablo Escobar. By the early to mid-1980s, the Medellin Cartel had gained global notoriety and became known as both the richest and most feared crime syndicate of their time through controlling most of the world's supply of cocaine. There were several factors that provided advantages for the Medellin Cartel's rise in the cocaine trade and swift domination of the market. One of these factors was Colombia's close proximity to Peru and Bolivia, countries that were climatically favorable to the cultivation of the coca plant. Another factor that contributed to the Medellin Cartel's advancement was the existence of pre-established trafficking routes for marijuana from Colombia to the U.S. This included trafficking routes through nearby countries, some such as Panama, which were complicit in the movement of cocaine in return for personal financial benefits to the country's leader, Manuel Noriega. In addition, Colombia's rugged geography made it very easy to hide cocaine production laboratories and made law enforcement efforts extremely challenging. Also, ongoing internal political conflicts and the prevalence of armed rebellion groups was another contributing factor to the cartel's emergence. These conflicts stretched the government's resources and weakened their ability to respond to cocaine trafficking. In addition, the economic benefits generated by the cocaine trade, along with assistance provided by cartel militias in battling the rebellion groups, contributed to an apathetic government attitude towards cocaine trafficking. Finally, as stated earlier, a surging increase in demand for cocaine in the U.S. due to the popularity of the drug and its portrayal as the party drug of choice for upper-class society supported the cartel's viability. Different law enforcement agencies and researchers have differing definitions as to what is considered an organized crime group. Despite these differences, there are consistent characteristics that identify a criminal enterprise as an organized crime group. One of the main characteristics is that they are motivated by financial gain. As discussed previously, the Medellin Cartel generated billions of dollars a year from participating in and cornering the market for cocaine. Another characteristic is that they are a structured organization with hierarchical authorities and a leadership. The Medellin Cartel operated as a functional, cell-based system led by Pablo Escobar and supported by other organizational leaders. Functions in the organization, such as cocaine production, transportation, distribution, in addition to other functions such as financial management, security, and government liaison, were each operated independent of the other organizational functions and usually only linked to each other through the cartel's leadership. These cells were also often family operated, which ensured loyalty through an elite membership and which made them difficult for law enforcement to infiltrate. In the event that law enforcement was able to disrupt a cell, the independence of each cell ensured that the organization as a whole continued to function. The cellular structure of the organization permitted leadership to allocate resources to where the most profit could be obtained. In addition, the use of violence is a consistent characteristic of an organized crime group. The Medellin Cartel was notorious for using a high level of violence. Murders, kidnappings, torture, bombings were common tactics used, along with assassinations of public figures such as police, judges, politicians, and journalists. Not only did the violence used by the Medellin Cartel tend to be gruesome, but it was also directed at not just the target of the violence, but also their extended family and close associates. This extreme level of violence used by the Medellin Cartel served to intimidate those that may work against the cartel and ensure compliance with those aligned with the cartel. As a result of the rampant violence used by the Medellin Cartel, Medellin became known as the murder capital of the world. Although organized crime groups tend to not be ideological, due to the intertwined relationship between the government and the cocaine industry, members of the cartel were known to be politically involved, including with Pablo Escobar himself, who held a seat in Congress and exerted efforts to become the president of Colombia. However, the purpose of this political involvement was to benefit the cartel's goals and was not otherwise ideological in purpose. Besides the organization's core functions of producing and distributing cocaine and the violence associated to it, the Medellin Cartel was also involved in other criminal activities. These activities included bribery and extortion of politicians, police, and public officials. These individuals would often be offered the choice of plata o plomo, which translates to silver or lead. In other words, a person could profit from facilitating the cartel's activities, or they could receive lead in the form of bullets. This corruption, along with the economic benefits that cocaine brought to Colombia, ensured leniency in how the government and law enforcement dealt with the cartel's activities. Also, given the substantial income that cocaine trafficking generated, money laundering was another important criminal act that the Medellin Cartel was involved in. To facilitate laundering money, the cartel operated many legitimate businesses, including international banking facilities, real estate, media, the ownership of sports team and automobile dealerships, construction, security, and politics. Politics, again, for the sole purpose of advancing the cartel's interests. This gave the cartel the ability to appear as a legitimate business and facilitated moving and legitimizing money brought in from cocaine. As I've discussed, the Medellin Cartel had a significant impact on Colombia's political systems and economy. This level of wealth and power also resulted in the Medellin Cartel having substantial influence in Colombian society. Pablo Escobar was known to act as a benefactor to poorer communities in Medellin. Escobar had developed housing, schools, sports arenas, and community centers in poor neighborhoods, which led to community support for the cartel. The cartel also provided jobs to these residents, which further endeared the cartel to them. In return for the support that the cartel provided to these neighborhoods, residents were known to spy for the cartel, carry out murder for hire operations on their behalf, and conduct bombings on the cartel's behalf. This symbiotic relationship further contributed to the Medellin Cartel's ability to evade disruption to their operations. Not only did the Medellin Cartel have a social impact on Colombia, but the prevalence of cocaine also had social impacts on other countries such as the United States. With the volumes of cocaine that were brought into the U.S. and the addiction issues that it generated, the U.S. government accelerated its war on drugs and put pressure on the Colombian government to assist in combating the cocaine industry. To ensure that the Colombian government appeared to be taking actions against the cartel, it was able to come to an agreement with Escobar and his associates to surrender in exchange for not being extradited to the U.S. Escobar agreed to the terms of the surrender that included himself and his associates being held in a private prison that he had built that functioned more like a resort than a prison. This arrangement allowed Escobar to continue leading the cartel and overseeing its operations. This arrangement lasted for a period of time until the Colombian government changed its position and agreed to extradite Escobar to the U.S. After becoming aware of this development, Escobar escaped his prison through a tunnel system and went into hiding. Concerted efforts were taken by law enforcement to capture Escobar, which ended with him being killed by police in 1993 while evading capture. After Escobar's death, the Medellin Cartel fragmented, and its control of the cocaine trade weakened substantially. After the decline of the Medellin Cartel's hold on the cocaine industry, other organizations such as the Cali Cartel and Mexican cartels filled the void that was left with the fall of the Medellin Cartel. Although the Medellin Cartel is not in existence today, its legacy remains in neighborhoods that it supported in Medellin. The cartel is also prominent in popular culture, with television shows such as Narcos continuing to draw attention to the magnitude of the Medellin Cartel's power. In closing, the Medellin Cartel wasn't just a drug empire. It was a violent, politically connected, and socially complex organization that changed Colombia and global drug trafficking forever. The Medellin Cartel's rise to power was the result of geography, timing, a mutually beneficial relationship with the government, the ability to fill a demand, public support, and a ruthless pursuit for profit. They became a model example of an international organized crime group combining global drug trafficking, strategic use of violence, widespread corruption, and a clear focus on financial gain. Their legacy serves as both a historical case study in organized crime and a reminder of the consequences that organized crime groups can have on society. Should you wish to delve further into the topic of the Medellin Cartel, here are some resources to get you started. Thank you for listening.